The warning sirens screamed through the corridors of the Alliance flagship Harmony. Red emergency lights bathed everything in an angry glow as crew members ran to their stations. In the midst of this chaos, Security Officer Tom Miller received an order that made him stop in his tracks. Protection Detail, Deck 7, Safe Room Alpha, his commander's voice crackled through the communication device. Priority 1 assignment. Princess Vera of Etheria. Move now. Tom grabbed his equipment pack and sprinted through the ship's winding passages. He had been part of the Alliance fleet for 3 years, but he had never been assigned to protect royalty before. The Etherian princess was supposed to be on a diplomatic mission when the Zephyr Empire launched their surprise attack. Now she was trapped on a warship in the middle of a battle zone. Safe Room Alpha was located deep in the ship's core, surrounded by layers of armor plating and energy shields. Tom arrived to find the heavy door already sealed. He placed his palm on the scanner and spoke his identification code. The massive door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the room was larger than he expected but still felt cramped. It contained 2 sleeping areas, a small food preparation unit, basic sanitation facilities, and various emergency supplies. Advanced environmental controls lined one wall, their displays showing atmospheric readings in multiple alien languages. Princess Vera stood with her back to the door, looking at a wall display showing the battle raging outside. She was tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to shimmer like polished crystal in the room's soft lighting. Her long silver hair was woven with small crystals that caught and reflected light in mesmerizing patterns. She wore flowing robes that seemed to change color as she moved. "Your Highness," Tom said, stepping inside as the door sealed behind him. "I am Officer Miller. I have been assigned to ensure your safety during this emergency." The princess turned slowly. Her eyes were large and luminous, a deep blue color that seemed to hold depths like ocean water. When she looked at Tom, her expression was one of barely concealed displeasure. "A human," she said, her voice carrying musical tones that were beautiful despite their cold edge. "I specifically requested Etherian protection." "I apologize, Your Highness, but all Etherian security personnel are currently engaged in ship defense operations," Tom replied, maintaining his professional tone. "I have been briefed on your species' basic requirements and environmental needs." Princess Vera's crystalline features hardened. "Basic requirements," she repeated. "Do you know anything about Etherian physiology, human? Do you understand the delicate balance required for our survival?" Tom set down his equipment pack and began checking the room's systems. "I know that your species requires a specific blend of gases in the atmosphere. Your comfortable temperature range is 15 degrees cooler than human standard. You need filtered light rather than direct illumination, and your diet consists primarily of crystalline minerals dissolved in purified water." The princess looked surprised that he knew even this much. "And you believe this basic knowledge qualifies you to protect me?" "With respect, Your Highness, my job is to keep you alive, not to make you comfortable," Tom said as he examined the environmental controls. "Though I will do my best to accomplish both." Another explosion shook the ship, causing the lights to flicker. Tom immediately moved to the control panel and began adjusting settings. His fingers moved quickly over the human-designed interface, making modifications to the room's atmosphere. "What are you doing?" Princess Vera demanded, moving closer to watch him work. "The ship's main environmental system is having difficulty maintaining stable conditions during combat," Tom explained as he worked. "I am manually adjusting our local settings to ensure continuity of life support." Princess Vera observed his work with growing confusion. The human was using what appeared to be improvised methods, connecting systems in ways that seemed completely illogical by Etherian standards. Yet somehow, the atmospheric readings were stabilizing. "This is not how environmental systems are meant to operate," she said. "No, but it is how they can operate when necessary," Tom replied. He pulled out a roll of silver tape from his equipment pack and began securing a loose connection. "Human engineers call this adaptive maintenance." "You are using tape," Princess Vera said, her voice filled with disbelief. Adhesive bonding strips, Tom corrected with a slight smile. Very useful for temporary repairs. The princess watched as Tom continued his unconventional fixes. He used spare electronic components from his pack to bypass damaged circuits, created new connections with flexible wire, and stabilized everything with liberal applications of the silver tape. Within minutes, the environmental system was running smoothly again. How did you know to do that? Princess Vera asked. Experience, Tom said simply. Humans have learned to make things work even when they are not supposed to work. Princess Vera retreated to the far side of the room, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. She activated a small crystalline device that projected a soft, blue-green light around her sleeping area. The light seemed to calm her, and her skin began to shimmer more brightly. Tom busied himself with checking the room's other systems. The communication array was functioning but showed heavy interference from the battle outside. The food preparation unit was working properly, though it would need to be reprogrammed to create Etherian nutrient solutions. The security barriers were holding steady. How long do you estimate we will be confined here? Princess Vera asked after several minutes of silence. Tom consulted his portable data unit. Standard protocol calls for safe room occupation until the all-clear signal is received. Given the intensity of this attack, that could be anywhere from 6 hours to 3 days. 3 days, the princess repeated quietly. In this small space. With a human. I understand this situation is not ideal for you, Your Highness, Tom said. I will do everything possible to minimize any inconvenience. Princess Vera studied him carefully. Why did your species join the alliance? Your technology is primitive, your methods are crude, and your understanding of advanced sciences is limited. What could humans possibly offer to a galactic civilization? Tom paused in his work. He had heard variations of this question many times during his service with the Alliance fleet. Many species viewed humanity as newcomers who had not yet earned their place among the stars. We offer persistence, Tom said finally. When other species encounter a problem they cannot solve with their advanced methods, humans find another way. We adapt. We improvise. We refuse to accept that something cannot be done. Persistence, Princess Vera mused. Is that what you call it when you use tape to repair sophisticated technology? That is what I call it when the sophisticated technology fails and the tape keeps us breathing, Tom replied. Another explosion rocked the ship, this one much closer. The lights went out completely for several seconds before emergency power restored minimal illumination. Tom immediately went to the environmental controls to check for damage. Primary atmospheric processor has taken a hit, he reported, studying the readings. We are now running on backup systems only. Princess Vera moved to look at the displays. Her expression grew worried as she read the Etherian text scrolling across one screen. The backup system cannot maintain proper atmospheric balance for both our species simultaneously, she said. It lacks the processing power to handle the complex adjustments required. Tom frowned as he studied the human readouts. The princess was right. The backup system was much simpler than the main processor. It could maintain either human standard atmosphere or Etherian standard atmosphere, but not the careful blend they both needed. We will need to choose, Princess Vera said quietly. Human atmosphere or Etherian atmosphere? No, Tom said firmly. We will find another way. There is no other way, the princess insisted. The system cannot do what we need it to do. Tom opened his equipment pack and began pulling out various electronic components. The system cannot do what we need it to do automatically. But systems can be modified. Princess Vera watched in amazement as Tom began dismantling part of the control panel. His hands worked with steady confidence, removing circuits and examining connections. You cannot possibly understand how this technology functions, she protested. I understand how all technology functions, Tom replied without looking up from his work. Something receives input, processes that input according to programmed rules, and produces output. The specific methods may vary, but the basic principle is universal. The human began connecting his own equipment to the ship's systems. Princess Vera recognized some of the components as standard Alliance communication devices, but Tom was using them in ways she had never seen before. "What are you attempting to accomplish?" she asked. "I am creating a secondary processing unit," Tom explained as he worked. "Your communication crystal can interface directly with Etherian technology, correct?" "Yes, but I do not understand how that helps us." Tom held up one of his modified devices. "This unit will monitor human atmospheric requirements and send adjustment signals to the main system. If we connect your crystal to monitor Etherian requirements and send those signals to this device, we can create a dual feedback loop." Princess Vera stared at him. "You want to use my personal crystal as part of a life support system?" "Only temporarily," Tom assured her. "The crystal will not be damaged, and you can disconnect it at any time." "This plan is completely insane," Princess Vera said. "You are proposing to jury-rig critical life support systems using personal communication devices and adhesive tape." "Yes," Tom agreed cheerfully as he made final connections. "Do you have a better idea?" Princess Vera hesitated. Her training had taught her to trust in proper procedures and established protocols. The humans' methods went against everything she had been taught about technology and safety. Yet their current situation was anything but normal. "If this fails, we could both die," she pointed out. "If we do nothing, one of us will definitely die," Tom replied. "I prefer the option where we both might live." The ship shook again, and this time they could hear the sound of metal grinding against metal somewhere in the distance. The Zephyr forces were getting closer. Princess Vera made her decision. She removed a small crystal pendant from around her neck. The crystal glowed with soft inner light and felt warm in her hands. "This is my personal interface crystal," she said, holding it carefully. "It has been attuned to my biorhythms since childhood. If your plan damages it—" "It will not be damaged," Tom promised. "I just need you to connect it to this port and maintain an active link while the system calibrates." Princess Vera placed her crystal into the modified connection Tom had created. Immediately, the crystal's glow intensified and data began flowing between it and the human devices. Tom watched his readings carefully, making small adjustments as the system learned to balance the atmospheric requirements of both species. After several tense minutes, the environmental controls settled into a stable pattern. "It is working," Princess Vera said, studying her own displays with amazement. "For now," Tom agreed. "The system will need constant monitoring, but it should maintain proper atmosphere for both of us." Princess Vera retrieved her crystal and examined it carefully. The device appeared undamaged, though it now pulsed with a slightly different rhythm than before. "How did you know this would work?" she asked. Tom began cleaning up his tools. "I did not know. I hoped. Sometimes hope is enough." "Your species truly is strange," Princess Vera observed. "You attempt impossible things and somehow make them possible." "We attempt necessary things," Tom corrected. "Whether they are possible or not becomes irrelevant." The princess settled back into her designated area, her expression thoughtful. The human had surprised her. His methods were indeed crude and unconventional, but they were also effective. Perhaps there was more to humanity than she had initially believed. "Officer Miller," she said after a few minutes of silence. "Yes, Your Highness." "You may call me Vera. Given our current circumstances, excessive formality seems unnecessary." Tom nodded respectfully. "Thank you, Vera. You may call me Tom." Another explosion echoed through the ship, but this time neither of them seemed particularly concerned. The environmental system continued its steady operation, and their improvised sanctuary felt secure. "How long have you served with the Alliance fleet?" Vera asked. 3 years, Tom replied. "I enlisted shortly after humanity joined the Alliance. What made you choose military service? Tom considered the question. I wanted to see what was out there. Beyond Earth, beyond our solar system. The Alliance offered that opportunity. And what have you discovered? That the universe is vast and full of wonders, Tom said. And that most problems have solutions, even when those solutions are not immediately obvious. Vera smiled for the first time since they had been confined together. That is a very human perspective. Is that good or bad? Tom asked. I am beginning to think it might be exactly what the Alliance needs, Vera admitted. Outside their secure room, the battle continued to rage. But inside, a human guard and an alien princess had found common ground in the most unlikely of circumstances. It was the beginning of an understanding that would change both of their perspectives on what it meant to work together across the vast differences that separated their species. The night was still young, and they had much more to learn about each other. The emergency lighting in Safe Room Alpha had dimmed to conserve power when Tom's monitoring equipment began beeping urgently. He checked the readings and felt his stomach drop. The improvised atmospheric system was showing stress indicators across multiple parameters. What is wrong? Vera asked, noticing his sudden tension. The backup power grid is overloading, Tom explained, studying the data streams on his portable display. Our dual atmosphere system is drawing more energy than the damaged infrastructure can provide. Vera moved to her own control panel, her crystalline fingers dancing across the Etherian interface. Her expression grew increasingly worried as she translated the readings. Power consumption is increasing every hour, she reported. At this rate, the system will fail completely within 8 hours. Tom ran calculations in his head. 8 hours would put them somewhere in the middle of the ship's sleep cycle, when engineering support would be minimal. Even if they could contact the main bridge, all technical personnel would be focused on keeping the ship's weapons and shields operational. We need to reduce the system's power requirements, he said. That is impossible, Vera replied. The atmospheric processing requires precise energy levels to maintain molecular stability. Reducing power would cause the entire mixture to become toxic to both our species. Tom stared at the environmental controls, thinking through possibilities. Human engineering had taught him that every system had redundancies and alternative pathways. The question was finding them. What if we do not reduce power to the processing unit itself, he suggested. What if we reduce power consumption by changing how the system operates? Vera tilted her head, her crystal ornaments catching the dim light. I do not understand your meaning. Tom pointed to the atmospheric recycling unit mounted on the far wall. Currently, the system is running continuous cycles to maintain perfect balance. But what if we program it to cycle in stages? Human atmosphere for 30 minutes, then Etherian atmosphere for 30 minutes, alternating back and forth. That would not work, Vera said immediately. Neither of us could survive 30 minutes in atmospheric conditions suited only to the other species. Not with normal metabolism, Tom agreed. But both humans and Etherians have emergency biological responses that slow metabolic processes during crisis situations. We could manually trigger those responses to extend our tolerance periods. Vera stared at him in disbelief. You are suggesting we repeatedly put ourselves into survival stasis? That is extremely dangerous. More dangerous than suffocating when the power fails? Tom asked. Before Vera could respond, another series of explosions shook the ship. These were different from the earlier impacts. They felt more controlled, more deliberate. Tom checked his communication device and found that the signal interference had actually decreased. The battle pattern has changed, he observed. Those were not random weapons fire. Vera activated her own communication crystal and held it close to her ear. Her expression grew alarmed as she listened to the faint signals filtering through the ship's damaged systems. Those are boarding charges, she said quietly. Enemy forces are cutting through the hull in multiple locations. Tom felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. Boarding operations meant close combat in the ship's corridors. It meant the enemy was confident enough in their attack to risk hand-to-hand fighting. Why would they board instead of simply destroying the ship, he wondered aloud. Vera's luminous eyes met his, and he saw fear there for the first time. Because they want something specific. Something that cannot be destroyed. The implications hit Tom immediately. They want you. My family governs the Etherian Crystal Gardens, Vera explained, her voice barely above a whisper. The gardens contain the master resonance crystals that control our planetary defense systems. If the Zephyr Empire captured me, they could force me to provide the harmonic frequencies needed to disable those defenses. How much do they know about our location? Tom asked, already moving to check the room's security systems. Unknown, Vera replied. But if they can trace my communication crystal's signature, they will eventually find this room. Tom studied the security display. Safe Room Alpha was well protected, but it was not designed to withstand a prolonged assault by determined boarders. The door could probably hold for an hour, maybe two, before yielding to cutting tools. We need to make ourselves harder to find, he decided. How do we accomplish that? Tom began gathering his electronic equipment. By making it look like we are not here. He connected several devices to the room's communication array and began programming new signal patterns. His fingers moved quickly across multiple interfaces, human and alien alike. What are you doing? Vera asked. Creating a false signature, Tom explained as he worked. I am programming the room's systems to broadcast a pattern that suggests the space is unoccupied. Environmental readings that indicate no life signs, communication traffic that appears to be automated system maintenance. Vera watched him work with growing amazement. The human was somehow manipulating both technologies simultaneously, creating seamless integration between systems that were never designed to work together. This requires understanding of both human and Etherian communication protocols, she observed. Pattern recognition is pattern recognition, Tom replied. The basic mathematical principles are universal, even if the implementation methods differ. As he finished the signal modifications, Tom realized they still had not solved their power consumption problem. The atmospheric system was still overloading, and now they had additional electronic equipment drawing from the same limited supply. Vera, he said, I need to understand more about how your crystal technology interfaces with ship systems. Is there a way to use crystal resonance to reduce the energy required for atmospheric processing? Vera considered the question carefully. Crystal resonance can amplify and focus energy flows, making them more efficient. But it requires direct physical contact between the crystal and the system being enhanced. Would your personal crystal be powerful enough to enhance our atmospheric processor? Possibly, Vera said. But maintaining that kind of connection would require me to remain in direct contact with the system for extended periods. It would be physically exhausting. Tom looked at the Etherian princess. Her species was not known for physical endurance. The sustained effort required to enhance their life support might be more than she could handle. There might be another option, he said slowly. What if we combine our biological capabilities instead of relying purely on technology? What do you mean? Tom moved to the center of the room where both sleeping areas were located. Human meditation techniques can slow our metabolism and reduce oxygen consumption. If Etherian mental focusing methods are similar, we might be able to reduce our atmospheric requirements enough that the backup systems can handle the load. Vera's eyes lit up with understanding. Etherian harmonics do regulate metabolic processes. During deep meditation, our people can reduce biological function to minimal levels. Can you teach me Etherian focusing methods? Tom asked. It is possible, Vera replied. But can you teach me human meditation techniques? Tom smiled. I can try. Though I should warn you that human methods are much less elegant than what you are probably accustomed to. They spent the next hour sharing techniques from their respective cultures. Tom taught Vera breathing exercises used by human military personnel to maintain calm under stress. Vera showed Tom how Etherian mental harmonics could synchronize brain wave patterns with crystal resonance frequencies. The cultural exchange was fascinating. Human meditation focused on emptying the mind and achieving inner stillness. Etherian methods emphasized filling the mind with harmonic patterns that created order from chaos. Yet both approaches achieved similar biological results. Your techniques are not crude, Vera admitted as she practiced human breathing patterns. They are simply different. More direct, perhaps. Etherian methods are more sophisticated than anything humans have developed, Tom replied as he attempted to synchronize his thoughts with the resonance from Vera's crystal. But they require training that most humans do not possess. As they continued practicing, they began to notice something unexpected. When they meditated simultaneously, each using their own species methods, their combined efforts seemed to amplify the effects. Tom's biological readings showed lower metabolic rates than he had ever achieved alone. Vera's crystal glowed more brightly and steadily than usual. We are creating a feedback loop, Vera realized. Human determination combined with Etherian focus is producing enhanced results. Tom checked the atmospheric readings. Their combined meditative state had indeed reduced their environmental requirements. The backup power system was now running within normal parameters. How long can we maintain this? He asked. Unknown, Vera admitted. This is the first time I have attempted sustained harmony with a non-Etherian consciousness. They were interrupted by a sound that made both of them freeze. Metal was being cut somewhere not far from their location. The cutting was systematic and deliberate, moving in a pattern that suggested professional boarding teams. Tom activated his communication device and tried to contact the ship's bridge. Static filled the channel, but after several attempts he managed to establish a weak connection. Bridge, this is Safe Room Alpha, he whispered into the device. We have boarding teams in our sector. The response was garbled but understandable. Alpha, multiple breaches, unable to send assistance, hold position. The connection died in a burst of static. Tom and Vera looked at each other grimly. They were on their own. How close do you think they are? Vera asked quietly. Tom studied the room's security sensors. Hard to tell with all the interference, but the cutting sounds are getting louder. Maybe 2 or 3 compartments away. Vera's crystal began pulsing more rapidly, responding to her increased emotional state. If they capture me alive, my entire world will fall to the Zephyr Empire. They will not capture you, Tom said firmly. How can you be certain? Tom began checking his equipment and the room's defensive systems. Because humans do not give up. Ever. Even when surrender would be logical, we find ways to keep fighting. What can we do against trained assault teams with just the resources in this room? Tom looked around their confined space with new eyes. Every object, every system, every piece of equipment was a potential weapon or tool. His mind began formulating possibilities. We turn this room into something they are not expecting, he said. They think they are coming to collect a prisoner from a safe room. Instead, they will find a fortress designed by a human and an Etherian working together. Vera straightened, her royal bearing returning despite their dangerous situation. What do you need me to do? First, we need to understand exactly how they are tracking us, Tom replied. Then we need to prepare some surprises for when they arrive. They spent the next 2 hours preparing their defenses. Tom used his knowledge of human tactics and improvised weapons to create obstacles and traps throughout the room. Vera employed Etherian crystal technology to establish early warning systems and communication enhancement. Working together, they discovered that their different approaches to problem solving were highly complementary. Tom's direct, practical methods combined with Vera's sophisticated theoretical knowledge to create solutions neither could have developed alone. As the cutting sounds grew closer, they took their positions and prepared for whatever would come through their door. They had transformed their sanctuary into something unprecedented, a fusion of human stubbornness and Etherian elegance that would surprise everyone who encountered it. The real test of their partnership was about to begin. The cutting sound stopped abruptly. Tom and Vera froze in their defensive positions, straining to hear any movement in the corridors outside their sanctuary. The silence was somehow more terrifying than the mechanical noise of the cutting tools had been. Tom checked his improvised sensor array one final time. The devices he had cobbled together from communication equipment were showing multiple heat signatures just outside their door. The boarding party had found them. How many? Vera whispered from her position near the environmental controls. At least 6, Tom replied quietly. Probably more waiting in the corridor as backup. Vera's crystal glowed more intensely as her stress levels increased. She had positioned herself where she could access both the room's main power systems and her own technological interfaces. Her royal training had never prepared her for this kind of situation, but working with Tom over the past hours had taught her to think beyond conventional approaches. A new sound began echoing through the walls. Heavy machinery was being brought into position outside their door. The Zephyr forces were preparing to cut through the reinforced entrance with industrial-grade equipment. Tom, Vera said suddenly, her voice filled with new determination. I have an idea, but you will think it is completely insane. Tom looked at her with interest. Over their time together, he had learned that Vera's ideas were often more creative than she initially believed. What are you thinking? The power systems in this room are connected to the ship's main electrical grid, she began, her words coming faster as the idea developed. My crystal can channel and amplify electrical energy through resonance harmonics. If we overloaded the local power grid deliberately, we could create a massive electromagnetic pulse. Tom stared at her, his mind racing through the implications. An EMP that large would disable every electronic system within several decks of the ship. Including all the equipment the boarding party is using, Vera pointed out. Their weapons, their communication devices, their cutting tools, even their life support systems. It would also disable our life support systems, Tom reminded her. And probably damage half the ship's critical operations. Yes, Vera agreed. But it would stop them from reaching us, and it would give the ship's crew a chance to retake the affected areas. Tom considered the plan from every angle he could think of. It was risky beyond measure. Creating an uncontrolled electromagnetic pulse could kill them just as easily as it would stop their enemies. But the alternatives were equally grim. What would you need to generate that kind of energy surge? He asked. Vera held up the crystal pendant she had been using for their atmospheric system. This crystal is already attuned to the ship's power grid from our earlier modifications. But to generate enough energy for a widespread EMP, I would need a much larger crystal matrix. How much larger? Vera reached up and touched the ornate crystal crown that had been woven into her hair since they entered the safe room. The crown was clearly ceremonial, but Tom could see that the crystals were much larger and more complex than her small communication pendant. You want to use your crown, he realized. It is the royal crown of Etheria, Vera said quietly. It has been passed down through my family for over 1,000 years. Each crystal has been grown and shaped by master artisans over generations. It is literally priceless. And you are willing to sacrifice it? Vera looked around their small room, then at the door where the sounds of heavy cutting equipment were growing louder. If this plan works, it could save both our lives and possibly the entire ship. If it fails, the crown's value becomes irrelevant anyway. Tom moved closer to examine the crown's construction. The crystals were indeed much larger than anything he had worked with before, and they were arranged in complex geometric patterns that seemed to pulse with inner light. How do we connect your crown to the ship's power grid? He asked. That is where your human improvisation skills will be essential, Vera replied. I can use the crown to focus and amplify energy, but I need you to create the physical connections that will channel that energy into the ship's electrical systems. Tom opened his equipment pack and began laying out everything he had available. Communication devices, repair tools, spare electronic components, and his trusty roll of silver tape. It seemed like an impossibly small collection of resources for such an ambitious plan. The crown's crystals operate on harmonic resonance frequencies, Vera explained as she carefully removed the intricate piece from her hair. If I can synchronize those frequencies with the ship's electrical current, the crystals should amplify the power flow exponentially. Exponentially enough to overload the entire grid? Tom asked as he began examining the room's power outlets and junction boxes. Exponentially enough to create an electromagnetic pulse that will affect multiple decks of the ship, Vera confirmed. The exact range will depend on how effectively we can channel the energy. The cutting sounds outside their door suddenly intensified. Sparks began appearing around the edges of the reinforced barrier as the Zephyr boarding party's equipment ate through the metal. They had minutes at most before the door would be breached. Tom worked frantically to create connections between Vera's crown and the room's power systems. He used every improvisation technique he had learned during his years of service, connecting circuits that were never meant to work together and bypassing safety systems that would normally prevent the kind of overload they were planning. "This is either brilliant or suicidal," he muttered as he secured a particularly complex junction with liberal applications of silver tape. "With humans, is there a difference?" Vera asked with a smile that surprised them both. Tom laughed despite their desperate situation. "Not usually, no." As he made the final connections, Vera positioned herself at the center of the room with her crown held carefully in both hands. The crystals were already beginning to glow more brightly as they sensed the proximity of the ship's electrical systems. "Once I begin the resonance synchronization, the process will be irreversible," she warned. "The energy buildup will continue until it reaches critical levels and discharges." "How long do we have between starting the process and the actual pulse?" Tom asked. "Approximately 90 seconds, Vera replied. "During that time, the electromagnetic fields in this room will become increasingly unstable. It will be very unpleasant for both of us." A section of the door suddenly glowed white-hot as the cutting beam finally penetrated the outer layer. They could hear voices shouting commands in the Zephyr language just beyond the barrier. "Now or never," Tom said, taking position near the manual controls that would complete the circuit once Vera began her part of the process. Vera closed her eyes and began to hum in a low, musical tone that seemed to resonate through the crystals in her crown. The crown's light intensified dramatically, and Tom felt the hair on his arms standing up as electromagnetic energy began building in the space around them. The door's inner layer began to buckle as the cutting equipment worked through the reinforced metal. Tom could see the shadows of figures moving in the corridor beyond. "Energy synchronization at 20%, Vera announced, her voice strained with concentration. The crystals were now blazing with brilliant light that made it difficult to look directly at them. Tom monitored the ship's power readings on his improvised display. The electrical grid was beginning to fluctuate as Vera's crystals drew increasing amounts of energy from the main systems. 40% synchronization, Vera continued. The resonance cascade is building properly. The door finally gave way with a shriek of tortured metal. Armed figures in full combat gear burst through the opening, their weapons raised and scanning for targets. They stopped in confusion when they saw Tom and Vera positioned around what appeared to be some kind of improvised technological setup. "Surrender immediately," the lead soldier shouted in accented Alliance standard. "Princess Vera, you will come with us voluntarily or we will take you by force." 60% synchronization, Vera announced, seemingly oblivious to the armed intruders. "Tom, prepare for circuit completion." The Zephyr soldiers advanced cautiously into the room, clearly uncertain about what they were witnessing. Their scanning equipment was beginning to register the massive electromagnetic buildup occurring around Vera's position. "What are they doing?" one of the soldiers demanded. "Some kind of communication attempt," another replied. "Probably trying to signal for help." Tom almost laughed at their misunderstanding. If they had any idea what was really happening, they would be running in the opposite direction. 80% synchronization, Vera said, sweat now visible on her crystalline features despite the cool temperature. "Energy cascade approaching critical threshold." The lead soldier raised his weapon toward Tom. "Step away from the control systems, human." Any attempt to interfere with our mission will result in immediate termination. Tom looked at Vera, who nodded slightly. They had reached the point of no return. Sorry, Tom said to the soldier. But humans do not surrender. He activated the final circuit connection. The effect was immediate and devastating. Vera's crown blazed with light so intense that everyone in the room was temporarily blinded. The electromagnetic pulse that followed was like being struck by lightning, thunder, and earthquake simultaneously. Every electronic device in the room died instantly. The soldiers' weapons went silent, their communication equipment failed, and their scanning devices went dark. The room's lighting disappeared, plunging them into complete darkness broken only by the fading glow of Vera's crown. But the pulse did not stop with their room. It propagated through the ship's electrical grid like a wave of electromagnetic destruction. Deck after deck of systems went offline as the energy surge overwhelmed circuits and fried components throughout multiple sections of the vessel. In the corridors beyond Safe Room Alpha, Zephyr boarding teams found themselves suddenly fighting in complete darkness with dead weapons and no communication with their command structure. Alliance security forces, who had been trained to operate in such conditions, quickly gained the advantage and began systematically retaking the compromised areas. Tom and Vera lay on the floor of their room, stunned but alive. The electromagnetic pulse had been painful to experience at close range, but their biological systems had survived the energy discharge. Around them, the Zephyr soldiers were struggling to their feet in the darkness, disoriented and weaponless. Emergency lighting should activate soon, Tom whispered to Vera. The ship's auxiliary systems are isolated from the main grid. Sure enough, dim red lights began glowing throughout the room as backup power systems came online. Tom and Vera could see the Zephyr soldiers clearly now. Without their electronic equipment, they looked much less threatening. Your weapons are permanently disabled, Tom announced to the soldiers as he helped Vera to her feet. Your communication systems are dead. Your scanning equipment is inoperable. I suggest you surrender. The lead soldier looked around the room, clearly trying to understand what had happened. What did you do? We solved the problem, Vera replied, though her voice was weak from exhaustion. In her hands, her once magnificent crown was now a collection of cracked and darkened crystals. The ancient royal artifact had been completely destroyed by the energy discharge. Tom activated his emergency communication beacon, which had been shielded from the electromagnetic pulse. Safe Room Alpha to any Alliance personnel. We have multiple Zephyr prisoners requiring pickup. The response came immediately. Alpha, this is Security Team 7. We are moving to your location. Excellent work on the EMP attack. The boarding teams have been neutralized throughout the affected sectors. As they waited for rescue, Tom looked at the remains of Vera's crown. I am sorry about your crown. I know how much it meant to you and your people. Vera smiled, though she was clearly exhausted. It served its purpose. Sometimes the most valuable things are the ones we are willing to sacrifice for others. Your people will understand. My people will understand that sometimes traditional approaches are insufficient, Vera replied. They will understand that working with humans opens new possibilities that we never imagined. When the Alliance security team arrived to collect their prisoners, they found Tom and Vera sitting together in the damaged room, sharing emergency rations and discussing the technical details of their improvised electromagnetic weapon. How did you know the pulse would be powerful enough to affect multiple decks? The security team leader asked Tom. We did not know, Tom admitted. We hoped it would be sufficient, and we were prepared to accept the consequences either way. The security leader shook his head in amazement. Only humans would attempt something that dangerous without knowing if it would work. Only humans and their friends, Vera corrected with a smile. Later, as they were escorted to the medical bay for examination, Vera made an announcement that would change the relationship between the Alliance and humanity forever. When we reach the next council gathering, she told Tom, I will be recommending that humanity be granted full voting membership in the Galactic Alliance. Your species has demonstrated something that our civilization desperately needs. What is that? Tom asked. The ability to find hope in hopeless situations, Vera replied. The willingness to attempt impossible solutions. The courage to sacrifice everything for the chance to save others. Tom considered this. Those are just human traits. Nothing special. To humans, perhaps, Vera said. To the rest of the galaxy, they are gifts beyond measure. The Alliance flagship Harmony continued through space toward its destination, carrying with it a story that would be told throughout the galaxy for generations. It was the story of a human guard and an alien princess who discovered that the greatest solutions come not from choosing between different approaches, but from combining them into something entirely new. And in a small medical bay, two friends from different worlds planned the future they would build together.